Masavaland, and who has demonstrated his patriotism and love for his country and his nation, Masavaland, within the shortest duration of time of his reign. Through what we see that has been acquired. When you talk about the stadium, this sports facility is courtesy of his efforts. You can also mention IU, and that is common knowledge, that if it were not him, it wouldn't be here in Bale. And this was only acquired in a duration of only 2 years, meaning that if he had stayed much longer, we would be having numerous achievements, courtesy of his efforts. He was one of the rare, and I must say, we could say he was the only one among the majority that had interpersonal skills, aggressive robbing skills, and who could call shots. He had the powers like a minister to actually decide that given infrastructure development comes to Masavaland, and courtesy of his efforts in a duration of 2 years, you can see what we achieved as Masavaland. If 40 years almost, I must say 37 years down the road of the reign of NRM, Bale could be ravaged by floods, and we lost it, claimed so many lives. In the 21st century, fixed culverts, infrastructure developments in terms of roads has failed. And they have been in power all this long, 3 decades plus. It's going to be 4. And they could not fix that. This is appalling, and we must say our lives as Masavaland are even much worse. We are in a more deplorable state than what it were at the time of the likes of the late Professor John Patrick Masette. The unity cannot be rectified in a split second. It is a gradual process. And it will take us ourselves to actually forge around and get this unity. But I've seen colleagues calling upon the RCC. RCC, who is not a Mumasava, cannot help to forge this unity of Bamasava. Bamasava need each other to have this unity realized. The truth of the matter is that we should have at least a team of elders who are of impeccable character, elders who are respectable, elders who we hold as Bamasava in high esteem, elders who can sit us down, counsel and guide us, including rebuking us. That's what we need. We have seen it in northern Uganda. Like they have actually a council of elders. We have seen it in western Uganda, Banyangore Kweteran Association. Why not Bugisu? If we could have this council of elders here, which has failed, you can also imagine that Tinzuya Masava, which was supposed to be also a unifying factor, has collapsed like a pack of cards, and there are no more. Even efforts to reinstate it have failed. So this already in itself, in and of itself, is a sign that Bamasava have not up to now realized the importance of unity, of working together. We bite each other, akin to what happens to white ants if you were to seal them in a container. Instead of the white ants holding a conference at Abamiruka to agree to attack the enemy who is the lead, covering them, they turn on each other and bite each other to death. And that's the spirit. It's an evil spirit, which has actually colonized the minds and hearts of Bamasava. That's why we bite each other. That's why we have perfected the art of pulling him down. Even the best actually example I would give is that of the late John Patrick Masette, Kuuya professor. It is said that the very day he actually escaped to Kenya into exile is when they robbed his home, ransacked it in broad daylight. And this was done by relatives in a jubilation, in a celebration that the great man has fallen is no more. That's why in the course of my speech, I was castigating and lambasting as Bamasava for that evil spirit and calling upon the clergy, the spiritual leadership, to pray for Masavaland, for us Masava, because I'm sure if we are not again to surrender it all to God and engage in divine persuasion of God to help Masava come together, as ourselves we shall be long at speeches, but very short at actualizing this unity.
Why would Obote?
Obote would not merely shed tears, but would demand to be taken back to his grave in Akokoro, the son of Opeto, in Lamu. Why? Because the state of affairs in the so-called city of Mbale, which is a shell of its former glory, is not comparable to what it were in the 1960s. 1960s I'm talking about, a time when we had just attained independence. But Mbale was the cleanest in the record of both East and Central Africa. In fact, in the examinations, primary living examinations, both in East and Central Africa, that would be one of the most fundamental questions that would be asked almost regularly in exams about the city which is the cleanest. Now look at the city. Even a city which cannot afford to fix some of the potholes is because they are actually grappling in a challenge of financial constraints. So as we talk, Obote would be completely disheartened if he got to some of the hospitals which he left here. And these are hospitals I'm talking about, which were fixed in his reign just merely when you had finished 3 years in power. He constructed 22 hospitals, including the one of Ruda. Count the one of Mbale also. You remember when he had a gunshot in the mouth and he was operated upon, it was in Mulago. Today, 19, whatever the time. But that was the shortest time possible he had been in the power. The hospital had all the necessary health care services that it could offer. It's not like now that is having no equipment. No, actually it has the highest staffing caps. And if you were to be admitted in Mulago, it would be suicidal. Most of our people who are ailing and of the political class now seek their health care services from the neighboring country of Kenya. You remember that our own Masette Kuuya, if it were not that he were in Kenya and died in Kenyatta Hospital, if he were here in Uganda, he would have died long ago, much earlier than today. So we thank God that he remained in exile. I want to salute his principles. He was so principled that he would not allow the current powers that be in Uganda to surreptitiously twist him and compromise him and dunk money and ministerial appointments to him so that he would come and get back to Uganda to work with them. He remained principled, and this is the Masava we have lost. But Masava of today are easily taken by money. When they see money, they start salivating like dogs. Even in parliament, you can imagine splashing money on members of parliament. Recently, we saw 40 million doing rounds. And you see members taking such money, moreover, we are highly remunerated. So even Masava, that level can also fall for the inducements and sweeteners of President Mukaburwa. This man, whom we are giving a send-off tomorrow, is a lesson and a challenge to us Masava to learn to be resilient, to learn to be principled, to love our country and be patriotic, and to stick and live within our means, not to allow to be compromised with money just because you need it. You should not worship man for money. And this is one example I must salute, even in death.
Thank you, sir.